Okay, so let us start today's lecture. Uh, in the last lecture, we had calculated the Feynman-Green's function, or we had evaluated what is the solution of a classical harmonic oscillator in the presence of an external source, and solved that harmonic oscillator equation of motion using the Feynman-Green's function. And we also discussed something about the retarded and the advanced Green's function. Today, what we shall do is we shall try to calculate the retarded as well as the advanced Green's function. So in this, so we have already seen that the retarded Green's function, that is, that we have defined it the following way: is divided by A plus I epsilon whole square minus omega square. So this is how, and with a factor of 2 pi. So this is how we take the form of this function. This is basically the gk. Gk is 1 by 2 pi multiplied by this factor. And the way in which we have written down the retarded Green's function, it tells us that both the poles have been pushed downstairs, and this is the thing that we discussed in the last class. We saw that the poles are basically at omega minus I epsilon and minus omega minus I epsilon. So the poles are basically at these 2 points. These are simple poles, and let us draw the contour now. So one pole is at this point, which is minus omega minus I epsilon. I hope you can see this clearly. Part of it is, I will not adjust the camera. I should try to hide it a bit. So this part I think is visible. So this is the complex K plane, and one of the poles is at this point, minus omega minus I epsilon. The other pole is at omega minus I epsilon. So both the poles, we can see that they are downstairs, and this is the, so we need to do this integral. So we move along this line, and depending on the sign of t minus t prime, we have to decide whether to close the contour in the lower half plane or the upper half plane. And we have discussed it many times in the last couple of lectures that if t minus t prime, at least for this integral, if t minus t prime is greater than 0, then you have to close it in the lower half plane, because only then in the limit of the large radius, if I take the radius to infinity, then this contribution to the contour integral from this arc, from this circular arc, will vanish. And this, so in this case, suppose we are going in this direction, and for t minus t prime greater than 0, we close it in this way. So this is the choice of the contour that we need to take. And in this contour, as I mentioned earlier also, in the last class, that you can push both these poles upwards. You can push it upward, and then what will happen is that you come in this direction, the pole is now at minus omega and plus omega. So what you do is, if you push it upward, then it will be like this. When you go in this direction, it will be like this. You go in this direction, And now this contour along the real line is with the poles being pushed downwards is the same as this contour with the poles sitting on the real line. So these two contours are completely equivalent. So whether you do the calculation using this contour or this contour, both these contours should give us the same result. That was the thing that I mentioned in the previous lecture. But what we shall do today is, as we also did it for Feynman Green's function, we shall calculate the Green's function by using this contour. We shall not push the contours on the real line and use this contour. But I leave it as an exercise for you to do. Please do it using this contour also, and just verify that you get the same result. So now for t minus t prime greater than 0, close it this way, and therefore we will get two contributions, and the contributions are basically this. This integral that we have here, dk by twice pi to the power of minus I t minus t prime by. So this factor we can write it down as k plus omega plus I epsilon, and then k minus omega plus I epsilon. This is a square minus b square, so you apply the formula for that, and this is the same, this is equal to this thing. And therefore, this thing is nothing but equal to the closed contour integral, and in the same integral. This is equal to this. But this you know that this is equal to, by Cauchy residue theorem, this is equal to twice pi I sum of residues at its poles, right? So you have to calculate the residues. But in this case, what will happen is we are closing this in the lower half plane, and therefore what we shall get is we shall get a minus sign due to the orientation of this curve. So you are moving in the clockwise direction. For anti-clockwise, you will get, by Cauchy residue theorem, it is at plus 2 pi I sum of residues. When you go in the clockwise direction, due to the orientation of this curve, you will get a minus sign. And therefore, you have minus 2 pi summation over the residues. This is equal to minus 2 pi I. And just need to calculate the residues at these two poles. And that will be limit k tending to minus omega minus I epsilon. So this is k plus omega plus I epsilon. We will have a factor of 2 pi from here. So this 2 pi and this 2 pi will cancel. And then we will have e to the power of minus I t minus t prime divided by these two factors. So you have two factors over here, k plus omega plus I epsilon, and then k minus omega plus I epsilon. So this is one of the contributions, and then plus limit. I hope you can see this. Is this visible? Yes, it's visible. So k tending to omega minus I epsilon. This will be k minus omega plus I epsilon. Again, you have this exponential factor. Divided by this is the full result. So we need to calculate this. Now you can see easily that this factor and this factor cancels, and this factor and this factor cancels. Therefore, this is equal to, so here we have a 2 pi, this cancels, And therefore we have a minus I. And we just need to put k is equal to this over here. So that will give us k minus I. K is basically minus omega minus I epsilon minus t prime. So this is done. And here we have to set k is equal to minus omega minus I epsilon. So this will be minus omega. So this will give us minus 2 omega minus epsilon. So this will be 2 omega. So we will get 2 omega from here. And from here, similarly, we will get plus 2 to the power of minus I. This k is omega minus I epsilon. Minus t prime.
There will be minus 2 omega.
Sorry?
Shouldn't that be minus 2 omega?
It will be minus 2 omega. I actually mentioned minus 2 omega, but when I wrote it 2 omega. Okay, this is a minus 2 omega, sure. So this will be this thing. And this one is this. And divided by k here, this will be by 2 omega. This will be 2 omega. So this is our final result, and now we know that these are all defined in the limit epsilon going to 0, right? The limit epsilon going to 0. Now you can set epsilon going to 0 limit. Here you can set epsilon to 0. This also goes away. These are gone, and therefore our final result now becomes this is equal to so we have this minus and this minus is gone and this becomes minus, right? Therefore we have I by 2 omega times e to the power of I omega t minus t prime minus e to the power of minus I omega t minus t prime. And this you can now see that if I just multiply this downstairs by I, therefore this becomes minus 1. So I have multiplied both numerator and denominator by I, so you get this. And this factor divided by 2i is nothing but sine. So this will give us minus 1 by omega sine omega t minus t prime. So this is our result. And we should write it. So what we have is the retarded Green's function g of r t minus t prime is this for t minus t prime greater than 0. This is the result. And we mentioned in the previous lecture that when t minus t prime is less than 0, for t minus t prime less than 0, g of r, you don't need to do any calculation, this is 0. Because then you have to close in the upper half plane, but the upper half plane does not contain any, does not enclose any pole, and therefore that contribution vanishes. And therefore, you can now write down this result in a nice form. This g of r t minus t prime is, you can write it in this form, is 1 by omega sine omega t minus t prime theta t minus t prime. So this theta function, putting the theta function actually takes care of this t minus t prime being greater than 0 or less than 0. When this is greater than 0, then this factor is 1 and you get this thing, this result. And when t minus t prime is less than 0, this factor is 0 and therefore g of r is 0. So this is the retarded Green's function that we get from this calculation. And now I will not calculate the advanced Green's function, but I will just tell you what to do. So the advanced Green's function is the one with. So in the advanced Green's function, you just put a minus over here, and this I replace by a. So a corresponds to minus, and therefore from here you can easily see that the poles are at omega plus I epsilon and minus omega plus I epsilon. So these are the poles. So you can see in the advanced case, both these poles are upstairs. So this is minus omega plus I epsilon, and this is omega plus I epsilon. Epsilon is this thing. This distance is epsilon. Okay? So both the poles are pushed upwards, and therefore once again, this is equivalent to this contour, this way of going along the real line. This line is, by the way, real of K, and this line is imaginary of K. So this contour is the same as, you can push it down, and therefore this will be like this. So if you push it down, this pole will come on this point on the real line, and then you have to avoid this pole in this way, go this way. This is plus omega. Once again, you avoid it in this way. And now, depending on the sign of t minus t prime, you close it in the lower half plane or the upper half plane. So once again, I ask you, in this case, you can do this calculation using, we shall do the calculation using this contour, but you should also check whether you get the same result and satisfy yourself by working with this contour. So these two contours are completely equivalent. And now, in this case, you can immediately see for the advanced case that g of a t minus t prime is equal to 0 for t minus t prime greater than 0. Because for t minus t prime greater than 0, you have to close it here, but this contour, closed contour, does not enclose any pole, simple pole. Both the poles are sitting above the upper half plane, therefore this contribution is 0. Without doing any calculation, you can write it down immediately. And for t minus t prime less than 0, what you will get is, you get 1 by omega sine omega t minus t prime. This is for t minus t prime less than 0. So in retarded case, you have a minus sign. Here you will not get a minus sign. This is due to the fact that for this, the advanced Green's function contributes when t minus t prime is less than 0. And for this, you have to close in the upper half plane. And in the upper half plane, the orientation of the contour is anti-clockwise, and therefore you will get 2 plus 2 pi I in the Cauchy residue formula. And therefore you don't get a minus sign here, you get a plus sign here. So please check this result. And once again, you can write it as a theta function. This advanced Green's function will be you have to put a theta t prime minus t over here. So it tells you that this is equal to this only when t minus t prime is greater than 0. This is this result, and this factor is 1. For t prime minus t less than 0, this is 0. So you should verify whether you get this result for the advanced Green's function. The calculation is exactly similar. I have done two cases. I have calculated the Feynman Green's function and the retarded Green's function. Advanced Green's function, it is exactly similar. You have to calculate the contribution from the two poles. And you are done. You will get the same result without a minus sign. So this is what I wanted to mention to you about the three Green's functions. And as I stated earlier also, that this the fact that you get various Green's function depends on the choice of the contour that you take. So this is the thing that I mentioned to you earlier. So you should keep in mind that for different choices of the contours, you will get different Green's functions. You will get different physical Green's functions. Each choice of contour corresponds to different physical situation. Okay. So now, for the rest of the lecture, I shall show you some interesting connection between quantum mechanics, and statistical mechanics. Or rather, this is an interesting connection between a quantum field theory and you can say quantum field theory and statistical mechanics, or even a quantum mechanical theory with statistical mechanics. So let us see this connection. So let us consider the time evolution operator, and this we know is given by, so this T is real. This is the time evolution operator, right? And this tells us that since the Hamiltonian H hat, the Hamiltonian operator is Hermitian, therefore this time evolution operator is unitary. It is an unitary operator. Therefore, states, if you prepare some state, if you prepare a system in some state and let the system evolve, you are sure that this evolution of the state of the system will be in an unitary way. So norms will be preserved after the time evolution, right? So that is the beauty of unitary time evolution. And this arises due to the fact that you have an I sitting over here, right? And this T is real and H hat is Hermitian. Therefore, this is unitary. But now, let us make a transformation. Let us set T is equal to minus I tau. Okay? Let us make this transformation. T is equal to minus I tau. And what this basically means is that tau is IT. And this tau is also real. This is also real. And this T is also real. Has to be. Okay? So this tau is real. This thing is a real number. So in this case, T is real, but okay, let me just go through this argument once more. When you write this time evolution operator, this T is real, but now you set T is equal to minus I tau, and this tau is real. When you say that this tau is real, this T, the small t, is not real anymore. This is what we should mention, keep in mind. Now this T is basically imaginary because tau is real. Okay, so what we are doing is we are making an analytic continuation from real time to imaginary time, and this kind of analytic continuation we have already encountered in my previous lectures, where I made a rotation of the time axis. You remember I made a rotation of the time axis to isolate the ground state contribution. So this T initially was a real number, but now I make this T imaginary by just rotating it. So this tau is real, but this T is now imaginary. So you are going to imaginary time. And there, what happens to this resolution operator? This evolution operator is E hat. This T is basically minus I tau. So you can consider this to be function of tau, right? This is function of tau. And this is e to the power of minus I by h bar Hamiltonian, and this time t is nothing but minus I tau. So therefore, this is equal to to the power of, so this minus plus, I into I is minus, therefore we have, this is h hat tau by h bar. So this is what we have. So this is now the evolution operator, and you can also look at the time dependent Schrodinger equation. This is our time dependent Schrodinger equation, and if you make this t, if you make this t imaginary, then what you will have is to just set t is equal to minus I tau over here, and therefore what we will get is the following. So this will become e to the power of, so instead of this, you set t is equal to minus I tau, so this will give us a minus del tau I x of tau is equal to Hamiltonian I x of tau. Right? This is the wave function, is a Schrodinger wave equation, and in, if you work it with state vectors, then this equation will be simply psi tau is equal to h hat psi tau. So when you take position representation, this will become the wave function. It will become psi of x, psi function of x. So this is our Schrodinger. So if the Schrodinger equation look like this, and the Schrodinger equation look like this, then the time evolution operator will be this. And you can see here that since tau is real, h hat is Hermitian operator, and there is no I sitting over here. Therefore, this time evolution operator in this case is not unitary anymore, but rather it is Hermitian. Because h hat is Hermitian, therefore u hat tau is also Hermitian. It is not unitary, and therefore states will not evolve in a unitary way. Right? In this case, the norm of the states will not be preserved because the time evolution is no longer unitary. So these are some observations that you can make. And as I repeat once more, that this time evolution operator is basically the time evolution operator for this Schrodinger equation, where you don't have an I sitting over here. And as before, what you can do is, with this time evolution operator, you can put in a complete set of energy eigengates. This is e to the power of minus h hat tau h bar. Therefore, that is equal to, now this is h hat taken is equal to En taken, right? Because these are energy eigengates. Therefore, from here you will get summation over n. This will be e to the power of minus En tau by h bar. So you can see you have very similar kind of formulas that we encountered earlier in real time for a unitary time evolution operator. You have similar formulas when the time evolution operator is no longer unitary, but rather it is Hermitian, and you have the same eigenvalues and the same energy eigengates entered this formula, but you have an exponentially decaying kind of a factor, a suppressing factor sitting in front instead of an oscillating factor. that we had earlier. So this is a formula that you have, and we have actually seen this formula earlier when we isolated the ground state and tried to investigate the meaning of this vacuum functionality with the transition amplitude, vacuum to vacuum transition amplitude with the presence of an external source. There we encountered these kind of things. So now let us see what happens to a propagator. For example, so this is q tau, and suppose I have q prime. So let us look at this object, and here, so what we had earlier was something like this: q p q prime 0, and we had a formula for this. The formula for this was d of q. These are the boundary conditions. T power of I by h bar action, and this action is nothing but 0 to times t. Then we have some dt prime say, and then we have n by 2 q dot. So let me write it down in this way. This is d dt prime q t prime whole square minus g of so this is in the real time, and we have already seen this path integral. This is the path integral representation for the propagator. And now what we do is we set t is equal to minus I t tilde. Now I make this t imaginary. Let me make this t imaginary and see what do we get. So if I make this t imaginary, then where this t tilde is real now, therefore this expression, so let me write when t is 0, so when t is equal to 0, then t tilde is also 0, right? So this lower limit for t tilde, that will be 0. And when t is equal to, okay, so let me make this to t. This is qt. Instead of small t, let me make this capital T. That will be easier. And let me make this t. This is t. This is t. You can keep it as t prime, but it is a dummy variable, so you can change it because I have changed this to capital T now. So there is no clash of notation. So now, when t is equal to capital T, then what we find is t tilde, this t tilde will be equal to I capital T, I times capital T, and therefore this thing I call as tau. I capital T I call as tau. Okay. So now I can write down this integral. This integral is basically d of q. This is d of q. This is q prime. The boundary conditions at q prime. This is 0, and this is qt. But now this will become q tau. Instead of t, it will become tau. Okay? Then we will have e to the power of I by h bar. So when t is equal to capital T, now I am making a transformation in this way. I am going to t tilde. So t tilde is tau. So this is tau, 0. And what is dt? Dt is basically minus I dt tilde. Dt is this thing. This one is this factor multiplied by n by 2. Now this I can just apply a chain loop. I can say that dt is basically d tilde of q times d tilde dt whole square minus v of q d tilde. Okay, what is d tilde dt? D tilde dt is I from this relation, and therefore you will get a factor of I square from here, and therefore this will become this whole square, and a factor of I square will give us a minus sign. Okay. Now this minus I and this plus I, this is plus 1. So this has become plus 1. And this is also no longer there. Okay? And here you have a minus and you have a minus. So you can take this minus common and put it outside. Therefore, ultimately what you have is this expression. This expression, so this is a plus now. And therefore, you see that this is nothing but path integral dq from q prime to 0 q to tau e to the power of minus 1 by h bar s e. And this thing is nothing but this object. Q tau q prime 0, this propagator is basically equal to the path integral. So this propagator has a path integral representation, and the representation is basically given by this expression. Path integral measured is dq, boundary condition this and this, q prime 0 to q tau e to the power of minus I by 1 by h bar se. And what is se? Se is this thing. This SE, we shall call it to be the Euclidean action. This is the Euclidean action. Why Euclidean? Because here you can see that this Lagrangian here is basically a sum of the kinetic energy plus the potential energy. Usually in Lagrangian what we have is kinetic energy minus potential energy, and here you get this replaced by plus. This full thing, this propagator, where now this is the imaginary time part. We have gone to the imaginary time. So this propagator, this formalism is called the imaginary time formalism, taking analytically continuing time to imaginary time. And this propagator that you have, the expression, the path integral expression for this propagator in the imaginary time formalism, this path integral is said to be the Euclidean path integral. So this is the Euclidean action and this is the Euclidean path integral. Okay, this is a very important thing, and you can see that the important thing about this analytic continuation. See, when we had this path integral earlier, the path integral formula, the Feynman formula that we derived initially, the path integral representation for the propagator, that is the Feynman formula. That formula is a bit problematic in the sense that you have a suppressing factor. You have a weight factor coming due to different paths, because for each path from this point to this point, with the points end points remaining fixed, for each path that you have, other than including the classical path, the other paths are all the quantum paths. For each quantum path, you have a weight factor. Each path is weighted by the action, e to the power of I by h per action s. So each path has a contribution by this factor. But all those factors are rapidly oscillating factors, which makes the path integral a little bit problematic. In a rigorous mathematical sense, the path integral is really not very well defined, because you have weight factors for different varying paths, and each of the paths gives you a rapidly oscillating factor because there is an I sitting in front. But that factor in case of the Euclidean path integral is completely gone, because in the case of Euclidean path integral, you have a factor like this is the Euclidean action, and this full thing is positive definite. You have a Euclidean action, and all these paths are weighted by this factor, and this factor is basically an exponentially suppressing factor instead of a rapidly oscillating factor. And therefore, this Euclidean path integral is very well defined mathematically, because all the paths are exponentially suppressed. The contribution from all the other quantum paths are exponentially suppressed. So this is a very well defined, nice path integral, nice mathematical object. So in this sense, this Euclidean path integral is very nice. This is one of the advantages of working with the Euclidean formalism. And the last thing that I want to mention is that we still need to show what is the connection of this beautiful formalism with statistical mechanics. But before that, I would just like to pause a little bit and ask you see whether you have any questions at this moment or not. Because the connection with statistical mechanics, I think I will leave it for the next class, because it will take a little bit of time. So you just go through these ideas, the steps, and convince yourself that you indeed get this kind of an object, which is the Euclidean path integral. And this has certain advantages, because this is very well defined, and along with this Euclidean path integral, we have some Euclidean action, where the action is basically written in this way. This is the Euclidean Lagrangian. You can write this factor to be L of E. The factor inside, so S of E that we have over here is nothing but 0 to tau. Now you can see you can change this T tilde to anything, because T tilde is a dummy variable. Therefore, we can write it as Dt L of E, where L of E is this. So this is the Euclidean path integral, and I would just like to stop by doing one more thing. Let us look at this expression once more. This expression that you have, and let us take a position representation. So you had tau to prime, and let us consider limit tau to infinity. Therefore, this will be equal to summation over n exponential En tau by h bar. Then we have 2 n in prime. So this is what we have, and this is equal to summation over n. Now this is, you can write it as phi n. These are energy eigenfunctions, phi n cube and this will be phi star in Q prime. And you obviously have this limit tau tending to infinity. And now you can see that this thing we mentioned earlier, that since the ground state is the energy of the minimum energy state, therefore in the tau tending to infinite limit, all the excited the contributions coming from the excited state energies will vanish, because the ground state contribution will dominate in that case, and therefore we will have e to the power of minus E naught tau by h. But this term we will keep, as we mentioned earlier also, this we will keep, because if we throw away this term also, then this will be 0 basically. This will be 0, so we will keep this term. In fact, if you throw away this term, it is basically making physical sense, because you know that when the time evolution is not unitary, then the contribution, the matrix elements in the limit of the long time, in the limit of large time limit should vanish, because the evolution is not unitary, right? And therefore, if you throw away this term also, you will get 0. But we just want to keep this term. So what it says is that in the large time limit, you can basically isolate the ground state, and this is the contribution. So this evolution, it basically tells you that this evolution is not unitary. You will ultimately land up with the ground state contribution in the large time limit. Every state evolves to the ground state when you take the limit tau going to infinity. So let us stop here at this moment. So what we have learned in today's lecture is that we have, apart from the retarded and advanced Green's function that we discussed in the first part of the lecture, in the second part of the lecture, we are now looking at the imaginary time formalism. And what is the imaginary time formalism? It is basically an analytic continuation of time, of the time variable. And when you make an analytic continuation of the time variable, when you make it complex and go to imaginary time, then you can get an expression for the propagator, the path integral representation for the propagator, which looks like this. And this S of E is the Euclidean action, which is basically this. This is the Euclidean Lagrangian. The difference between the Euclidean action and the Minkowski kind of the Lorentzian thing is that we have a minus sign over here, the proper minus sign. The difference between this imaginary time formalism and the real time formalism is that in the real time formalism we have a minus that we encounter in standard classical mechanics, but here, since we have gone to the imaginary time formalism, this is plus. So we have LE, you have SE, you have a path integral representation, and that path integral representation is very well defined mathematically, because all the varied paths are suppressed by an exponential factor, which is not the case in the case of the Feynman path integral. So this is a very well defined object. And we have also seen the time evolution operator, how does it look, and we have also looked at a matrix element of the time evolution operator, and that matrix element actually ultimately evolves to the gives the ground state contribution in the large time unit. So these are the things that we have studied today. We have looked at, and in the next lecture we shall see the connection of this Euclidean path integral with statistical mechanics. So is there any question at this point? Do you have any question?
Sir, in the last line, when you are writing e to the power minus E0 tau, you are applying the same logic as before, right? That E0 is the lowest energy level.
Absolutely. The same logic that we had used earlier. So
Yes.
this is the same logic. You can actually throw away this, throw this out. This also goes to 0, but it is making physical sense, because if you have an exponentially damping factor in time, so that will that will wash away any contribution that you have, any matrix element in the large time maybe. Ultimately, this will also be gone, but you just want to keep it. It basically says that after very long time, only the ground state contribution will be the most dominant one. The excited states you can throw it away because they are smaller than the ground state contribution. Okay, so let's meet on Friday at the same time. We will continue from here. Thank you very much. And I hope you are getting all the lectures, right? You are getting the video lectures. I have sent the last video lecture to Shoham. Last.
I have shared them.
Okay, very good. So today is the 13th lecture, I think. Okay.
Yes.